Welcome to the Global Marketing Show, where we explore how language and culture impact global business. I'm Wendy Pease, your host and president of Rapport International. Let's get started. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of the Global Marketing Show. As always, I'm thrilled to be here because we've got a fantastic guest coming on. She's been called the international girl by her bosses, so we'll dig into that a little bit more. But before we do, I wanted to bring you our tidbit from Rapport International. Rapport International is the sponsor of this podcast, and they provide foreign language translation in over 200 languages. And they have a tidbit about Arabic today. So front or back, Arabic is read from right to left, the opposite of English. So an Arabic language brochure starts at the last page from an American view and works its way in. So sometimes if you pick up a brochure and it looks like it's oriented the wrong way, that's because we all have different ways of seeing the world. So today's guest is Tata Metaisian. I'm going to have to ask her to say that to make sure that I get that right. And she's a marketing executive and AI systems builder. She's an educator, speaker, and founder with over 18 years of experience across iconic brands and high growth ventures. Her experience includes Nike, Pixar, Deloitte, Solo Learn, and Pangaya. So Tata, I usually ask before the podcast starts, how do you say your last name?
My last name is Metaisian.
Metaisian. Yes. Okay. I should have asked that. Well, welcome, Tata. So I have to ask you to tell us more about why you're known as the international girl.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast. I have been a listener, listened to a few episodes, and it's really good to be among this great guests you're having. My nickname of an international girl came to be because I was born in Armenia, raised in Russia. I have lived in Germany, the UK, and now live in Switzerland. And I also managed to marry Brazilian. So my whole life, I have been obsessed with learning languages, dreaming about being just around the globe and traveling. Some kids enjoyed, Legos or playing dolls. I had a world map in my kids' room, and I was learning in that bedroom, I was learning where the countries are, what the borders are, and what the capitals are. It was just my little obsession, and that little obsession turned to be a career. And that's why my bosses used to call me international girl, because that's just who I am, I guess.
Yes, you were just born that way. And so really early on, you had this fascination with the world map, but you knew you wanted to be in global business from early on too.
I don't know if I wanted to be in a global business, but I definitely wanted to be in something global. When I was a kid, not necessarily I fully understood what the business was, but I was definitely fascinated by different cultures, languages, the way people talk to each other. And it just felt so interesting. And I guess that being, yourself as well, right? You are an international business. That just is a very different kind of environment. So I followed my passion.
Okay. And so what was that passion? Like, what did you go to school from, and what kind of industries did you get involved with?
Actually, I wanted to study international relations, and I was really, really working hard to get in. But sadly, I failed the exam and I couldn't get into my bachelor's degree. And meanwhile, I was really, really good in math. So the program I got enrolled in, I had enough points to pass, was mathematics and economy. So it was a combination of math and economics. And that's, I guess, where my passion for technology comes from. I am really a lot of my obsessions come from sciences, mathematics, and it was, let's call it, a second interest of mine. So I went on, but I never left the dream. I was really upset I couldn't study international relations. And I remember saying out loud, standing there, I was crying out loud for a long time, not getting into the program. But then I said, okay, one day I will study abroad and one day I will work for an international company. So as soon as I was 18, I decided to try find an internship in an international company. And I applied to a few. I got in to the one I wanted the most, which was Deloitte. They had really great summer internships back then. It was the environment I dreamed about, working with people from different countries, in different industries, in different businesses. And internship turned into a job. And I spent 2.5 years there. And then I got a scholarship to study abroad. And I went to do my master's in international semester in Germany. So eventually I got the both things I wanted. It just took a little bit of time. It required patience and work.
Right, but you were still very young to be able to have those opportunities. So you worked for Deloitte for 2.5 years, and then you went on to, I want to get into talking about Nike and the World Cup because you had some interesting stories about global marketing in there. But before we do, a little bit about Deloitte. What, in your global experience in that, was there anything that you took from that you think listeners could learn from?
I guess, yes. It was my first time working with the management team from different countries. So Deloitte and other consulting firms are structured in a way that you have management teams, or the partners, how they're called. They would come from different offices of Deloitte for various projects. And I remember I had an Irish boss, I had a Russian boss, and then I met one of my clients. They were a French bank and they had French leadership team. I was very young. I didn't fully understand back then what were the differences or how that was happening. But there was a lot of times we had to clarify and make sure we all understand each other. Although the common language is English and it seems like we all speak it, not necessarily we understand the same things. So watching that dynamics between the two partners and then a client who is French, that was the first time in the negotiations where I witnessed this. Oh, like the way we understand the deadlines or the way we speak about the project is going well or not would be very different. Like the Russian guy would be super direct and he will say things pretty straight. The French guy would be pretty direct too, but he had a fun way of like slightly complaining, like the way he was talking. It was what I later learned could be called stereotypical, but he was pretty expressive as well. And the Irish guy always tried to make a joke about it or smooth things out and like not make a big fuss of the things. And like he was really acting like a glue or a butter, and in that dynamic of a free people. And I was then thinking that was more the personalities, but later on in my life, I realized that was actually a lot of it was the cultures we were brought up in and how we react to the world, how we do the negotiations, all those things would be different. So I guess that was my first lesson, that that international experience in one project.
Right, right. Yeah, that is fascinating because it's so stereotypical, but you can bring it down right to the actual experience. So then you leave Deloitte, and where do you go after that?
I left Deloitte because I wanted not to do finance anymore. I was really bored. That was a job which taught me a lot, but it didn't feel like the job I could do for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And I wanted to work in the real business. And while I was in Germany, I had a pleasure to have some really great professors in entrepreneurship and marketing and business management. So I started looking for management trainee programs. And one of those management trainee programs, which I found, was at British American Tobacco. They had the 2-year program, which included 4 or 5 different rotations. And I was interviewing for multiple roles at the same time, different programs. But I remember very well how I came to the last interview at BAT, and the person I met was a 33-year-old. She was the marketing director, German, really super smart. I think she's now VP at Lego Group. like extremely impressive. Karan Pasha is her name, and she made such an impression on me that I was like, I kind of want to be her when I grow up. I want to be like her, so I need to work in her team. It was less of a thing like it wasn't just about the company or what they offered or the salary. I just felt it was the first time I could relate to someone, and she wasn't that far off age-wise, but she was so successful already. I remember when they called me and told me that I got an offer, I was like over the moon because it felt like I would have a chance to work with someone I truly admire. It wasn't long. I had a chance to work with her just for a little bit before she moved to another country and got another very good job. But it was still that having that experience, I guess, was really important. And I think it's very important in general for girls of younger age, like I was 21, I think back then, to have that mentor, someone they could look up to and know that you could be 33 and lead a massive team. So it was really nice.
And then while you were there, you opened a bunch of international markets, right? Isn't that what you were working on?
Yes, I did. Actually, one of the projects I was working on was in London office, and we were repositioning one of the brands. It included us launching or relaunching the brand across about 14, 16 markets and making decisions if we want to go there or not. And that included on my side doing the customer research. Back then, it was 2012, 2013, 2014. There was not a lot of experience like nowadays. You have all these digital focus groups and synthetic personas, like you have AI personas you could talk to, you have digital guides. Back then it was old school focus groups, like you would actually get people in a room and listen to them talk. And they were hired translators to help us understand what was going on in the room. And that was allowing us to get a little bit of customer insights and understand. On top of that, of course, working with local marketing teams and trying to grasp the context, the market dynamics. And very quickly, you learned things. I remember very well, we were having a call with one company, which the VAT recently acquired in Indonesia, and speaking about distribution. And if you live in a big country like the US or in the UK, you have train systems, you have a lot of options to go with a car, with the trucks. Like you could deliver goods pretty, like there are set rules with big, massive volumes. But when you are in a country like Indonesia and you have a lot of islands, I had no idea that a lot of the products, like day-to-day goods, would be delivered on small little mopeds, like little bicycles pretty much, or motorbikes. And that was insane to me to just imagine that. And also thinking of coordinating the launch could not be so easy or so predictable because of the weather conditions or how much those people could actually carry on those motorbikes they were driving. Or learning about the Brazilian culture and understanding that the color palettes or the messaging which we were developing in London office might be completely not resonant with the culture in Brazil, because they would prefer a lot brighter colors, different kinds of messages or brand promises. And that was a very humbling experience, not just learning about the culture, but also understanding that you may feel very smart and very knowledgeable about how to do marketing, but the way you do marketing could actually change depending on which country you go into. And the channels could change, the distribution speed could change, the product could change, the marketing campaign could change. And that felt, well, like, I don't know, like how else you experience this unless you work with so many markets, but that is a very humbling experience. Like if you are a really great marketing director in the US, it does not necessarily mean that you could be a very good marketing director in Saudi Arabia, for example. It just is a different market and different methods work. So I learned that thankfully very early on. So you always stay humble.
You always stay humble to learn, but say you are head of global marketing and responsible for all these countries and all these branching, picking the markets to go into and then expanding them. How do you, as a one country centric marketer, think about going global?
That's a great question. I was actually head of international at a scale up unicorn startup called Pixart. That was my job after Nike, which I guess we'll talk separately about. And that was the first time I was head in international markets. And I was first time in the position of my former bosses, figuring out how do you launch the brand in all these regions. And the way you do that, if you don't have a lot of resources or you don't have a lot of money, which I'd assume most of the listeners are not part of large organizations like Nike, which you would have local teams and local knowledge, I had to heavily rely on my network and reaching out to people across different companies, just like literally messaging them on LinkedIn and being like, hey, I saw you're a marketing manager in Brazil. We're trying to do this. Would you be able to have a 30-minute call with me? I'd really appreciate your advice about the local culture. And you would be surprised when you come to someone from this position of like, hey, I want to learn. A lot of people respond and a lot of people are super happy to help. I had so many people respond to me, and that actually turned into a whole research project. I interviewed people from more than 20 countries to understand how they have done international expansion as well as gather local insights. And that allowed us to successfully launch a number of regions because we had that local experts network I have built through initially just like me trying to find some answers. That's one way. Another way, nowadays with AI, you are able to scrape social media. And that's something which is an incredible, super rich informational source. I was just working with a fertility clinic in the UK, and we were analyzing the customer sentiments, and then I was comparing that to the US, and it was so different. Like if they ever decided to launch in the US, or they wanted to decide like to go into Middle East, that was one of the markets we were considering. The experiences of people are so different, and you would be surprised how much of it is actually discussed on social. So you could look at YouTube videos which are published where people share their experiences. You could go to Reddit, you could go to LinkedIn, depending on the industry you're in, and you could just try to listen on socials, not to understand about your brand, but to understand about what the customers think, how they shop, what is the current market situations, what are the current things they consider, and that would inform your strategy a lot. And of course, if you have money and you have resources, you could always hire a partner who could help you. Sometimes that's a localization agency, sometimes that's a freelancer, depending on the resources you got. That is always a good idea. If you have the money, I would, of course, try to shortcut it and get an expert on board.
You bring up something that many people often don't, is that your localization agency can be a real resource on doing research. Talk to me about that, because usually people will think, oh, localization, if I need translation. They don't think about all the other areas that they can bring. So what are your thoughts?
It's a good question. So a lot of times, I guess localization is treated as translation, simply just like blank that. Localization is translation, and I think it is so much more than that. The localization is not translation. Translation is just such a simple little thing. Knowing the culture, knowing the language, having that local network and connections could actually unlock a lot more insight. So what is true localization? You mentioned earlier about the way the books are read in Arabic, right? That you read from the end, the brochures, and then you write from the right to left. That's just one part of it, right? But if we, let's say, sit down and talk with a translator from your team who speaks Arabic, and we'll ask about some of the local traditions or the local ways people live, depending on the country they're from. So, for example, if we have someone from UAE or Saudi, they would tell us about the traditions which they have of gathering at someone's house and having having a meal at a certain time of the day. Like in the Britain, there is a tradition of a 5 o'clock tea, and they have tradition in Middle East and in Arab countries specifically to have this to this setup. And then men and women would come together separately, and that's considered its name. They call it majlis, and that is something which is considered to be a very important social bonding experience. You would also learn that they have an immense pride in wearing their national clothes and having traditional clothes on, and you don't have to picture anyone wearing anything like what we consider normal clothes or like Western clothes, because they don't bother. They don't think that they're restricted wearing the clothes they do. You would learn about their hospitality and the way they treat foreigners. You would learn, and all of that just a translator could tell you if you ask the right questions, because they live there, they have that experience. But I guess that it's about the questions you ask, right? So you need to know what to ask and how to ask, but they can be an incredible source of insights, or at least point you in the right directions. I will always ask also, by the way, the translators I have worked with, I would be like, okay, and do you know any graphic designer or art director among your friends, or someone like you follow? Could you just send me some connections I could make, or like introduce me? And then now I think I would ask them is, if they're in the younger age group, I would ask them who do they follow on social media, what kind of channels did they listen to. And I remember our translator, Arabic translator, actually he was in his like mid-20s, and he had a lot of people he followed on social media, and that's how we discovered the whole influencer world in that region. So it was really great. And I was like, okay, good. I know at least like 5-10 influencers, and once you know those, from there it's a lot easier to build up that presence. So an immense help, at least for me, it has been always.
Yes, yeah. I'm so glad that you recognize that and you talk about that, because when I do speaking, I'll often talk about that your translators and interpreters are a cultural conduit, is how we call it. But you've brought it down to very practical ways you can use their knowledge. Okay, so let's talk about Nike and the World Cup just happened here in in North America. So yeah, you had experience in prior year in 2018, was it?
Yes, it was in
Yeah, with the
2018.
World Cup. So
Well, I
working for
congratulate you with the
Nike,
World Cup.
yeah, it was very exciting this year. Lots of unexpected wins, so we enjoyed it.
Lots of unexpected wins and unexpected games. And yeah, I guess the World Cup is just a very special event, like any sport event. It unites people a lot across different countries. You see a lot of great things happen, a lot of good brand marketing campaigns as well. So like it's a really good moment commercially, emotionally, for the company. So it's a good thing to have in your country. I was lucky enough like to always be active and be very much big fan of a sport. And one of my friends, he got a job at Nike, and I went to visit him. I went to visit him in Holland in their European headquarters. And while I was visiting the office, because they can bring guests to show the office, I remember standing there on the ground in front of Bill Bauer meeting room, like the building with the meeting rooms, and I was waiting for him. And I remember looking up to the sky, looking around, and I sat on thinking, I wish I work here one day. Little did I know that I remember very well, because I went there for my birthday in September. Little did I know, in November or December, there was a job opening, and they were looking for the marketing lead to lead running, track and field, Olympics, like all related to that, Summer Olympics. So I was like, oh my God, I am gonna apply. So I asked that friend for a referral, and I applied, and I got a response back saying that we are very sorry, but your expectations on the salary or the role do not match the role, so it would be a pass. I got very upset, but I didn't give up on a dream. I just said, okay, there will be another role for sure. Like the World Cup is coming. I'm definitely going to see more roles coming in. It was 2016.
Yeah.
Oh no, still 2015. And then I remember it was so funny. It was February 2016, 2 months later. I get a call from an unknown number, like just some random cold call. I respond to it. And there is this really young girl on the phone, and she's like, hello, I'm the assistant of marketing director and the lead for the World Cup 2018 campaign. And Robert would like to talk to you. He saw your CV. And I was like, what? Like, oh, okay. Is this a scam? Is this like, what is this? So it turned out not to be a scam. It was real. I asked her to send an email, and she sent an email from the legit@nike.com email. Apparently, he was very frustrated with the recruiting process. He couldn't find anyone, and he went through the CVs himself. And then he saw that I worked at BAT, and apparently one of his really good former colleagues, friends in the US, he was one of my bosses there. And he was like, I want to talk with her. So I come in to the interview. It was one of the weirdest interviews I've ever had in my life because it lasted maybe 45, 50 minutes. And when I entered the room, he had a baseball setup in the room, which was really weird. Like he had the ball and he had the glove, and like it was like a lot of sporty stuff around. He had a basketball ball also in his office. And I was like, this is like a borderline cliche. That's so odd. And he was so chill and he was so relaxed that it was like more of a conversation like we're having now rather than the job interview.
Yeah.
And then he asked me, if I message Brian, what do you think he's going to say about you? I was like, well, I don't know. You could message him now. And I think he's going to say work with her. So in front of me, he went on LinkedIn and he messaged him, hey, Brian, what do you think? And by the time we finished the conversation, Brian responded and said, like, you'll make a mistake if you don't hire her. And he said, okay, then you're hired. I need to introduce you to the team. If it goes well, then you'll be hired. So that was one of the weirdest, shortest interviews of my life. Like I tell it now, and I think
job.
I got a dream job. Yeah. It was an incredible experience. It was one of the hardest jobs I have done. It was not easy because the quality, like whatever quality bar you have, when you get to Nike, you realize it's not good enough, and they will push you to do a lot better, a lot more creative, a lot more different. And also you'll start to work, like there is this international big event which is happening, the World Cup. Many teams from different countries come, but also many people from different countries come. But also you have a local market to serve, because the local market is the one which you need to prepare to get to that event commercially, financially, but also on a cultural level. And all of that is a lot of little pieces to manage. And when it's that kind of an event, you also get attention from the global team, headquarters, and also the previous World Cup hosts. In this case, it was one of the hosts was Brazil. So we were working very closely with Brazil team. I guess that was, I would say, like the dream job and the best job. I wish every marketer had this experience in their lives. They could really live through this experience and work for such a brand in this kind of iconic moment. But it also is not for people who are not ready to grind. It's not for people who just want to have a fun job, because it is a lot of work. It's a lot of weekends. It's a lot of long working days. The deadline is set. You cannot move it. Like the World Cup is going to happen. You're ready. You're not ready.
So wait, let me stop you there and take you back to, you've got the teams, you've got the visitors, you've got the local markets, you've got people who are watching different stars, relate to different colors, get excited about different things. So how do you create a global? I haven't thought about that before, because I've looked at, okay, if you're Nike and you're taking a product into a country, how do you localize for that? But how do you come up with a global message that's going to work across the World Cup with all those different people?
It's a hard one, a lot of work. So the concepts you scrape are just an immense amount of concepts you try to come up with and insights you try to come up with. But I guess that the biggest and most important thing which you need to know about Nike is that the way you do marketing campaigns, it doesn't come from founder's brilliant idea, like how it often works in a lot of businesses. It doesn't come from just me sitting there on my sofa and thinking, oh, it would be so good to do something as a marketing lead. No, it comes from very good understanding of your customer, or in that case we call people the athlete, so understanding the athlete. Who is that person? Who you're trying to get into? Who is, like, what do they dream about? What do they wish for? And when you think about it, and you think about the people who watch the games, or the people who are striving to really get into that professional stage, or maybe just they're big fans, and then you look at the local culture, you could try to find things which are on the intersection, which could speak to many people. So we always looked at the local stories. We looked at the people. He would be really good, like story, like I was call them like you could call them heroes, or I guess protagonists, people who would be those anchor stories you could rely on, and not necessarily they would be famous players or they would be very big names. And then you would try to see how that story would resonate on multiple levels. Would that story or would that message resonate across many levels? And if you look at marketing campaigns Nike has done over the years, the messages, it is always started from an athlete, a story. Like you look at the campaigns, like Serena's campaign, for example, Serena Williams, or you look at the World Cup campaign, which we did. The idea of a campaign in 2018 was about that whatever people tell you around you, you don't give up and you still go ahead. Whatever they say, no matter what they say, you could still overcome whatever people say. And there was a lot of tension in that time for both professional athletes and in general for a number of like regular people, figuring out that they don't believe in themselves. And that's so universal, because if a world around you doesn't believe in you, or they don't support you, the environment you're in, the people around you, then you need to be so much stronger as an individual, have so much, like, you gotta be a rock, you gotta know what you want, and you gotta go ahead and get that, even knowing that people around you would tell you won't be able to become that. So that resonates on a number of levels. It doesn't matter which country, it's a personality thing, it's a character thing. And that's what you look for. You look for that raw emotion. And then there is a criteria. You have to pitch your story at Nike, whatever you bring up as a concept, it goes as a pitch. You first pitch to your own team. Then you pitch to your agencies. You pitch, or if you came up with one agency, you pitch to others. You pitch to your leadership team. Then you go and pitch it to other regions, and you pitch it to the headquarters. And the goal is for you to get people to feel, and people are going to love who listen to this, to feel goosebumps. If your story doesn't generate goosebumps across number of groups of people, it's not a well thought through story. So you go back to the drawing board. That means, but I mean, when you're at Nike, you have a time and you have resources to go back to the drawing board. But your story should be so sharp, it should be so emotional and so raw that it resonates with a lot of people. And then it becomes cross-cultural, because that speaks to the human psychology. And then it doesn't matter who is on the screen. It doesn't matter which athlete you use or groups of athletes you use. It will speak to Brazil, it would speak to Russia, it would speak to Germany, and it would speak to the UK. So you win.
Fantastic story to learn about how, so then to learn about how to actually do marketing down to the emotions. And Nike is like that. Yeah, because you look at their commercials or their stories and they always do resonate.
You have to feel something. And that feeling is so weird, but it's so, everyone has those emotions. Doesn't matter which country you're in, we're all humans. So I guess that's the thing which I learned with them, is that you could do great stuff, which is not localized, and it will be resonant across the globe.
Okay, so now we've talked about a few different companies and they have been consumer products. Have you ever worked in like business to business services, and does that marketing concept still work?
The marketing concept of working like at Nike on emotional level, or internationalization part?
I was thinking of yes, both. Because you know, in Nike, you've brought the story of you can do the internationalization by getting down into a feeling in the human condition that all cultures are going to relate to. And so, when you've worked in professional services, is it still trying to find those emotions, or is it a different message that might be more logical?
Well, I've worked, answering your question, I've worked in B2B. I've worked in B2B software as a service, and also in B2B with my own company, providing educational services on AI and marketing, doing boot camps to with different organizations, as well as like providing marketing services. So I've sold services internationally, but I've also had experience for a few years working in B2B software as a service setup. And few things apply, like basic localization principles. Localization is not just translation, for sure applies. For example, a lot of times people would launch an international product. I had a client this year, I was working with video localization software, and their checkout page would only check out in the US dollars. Such a simple thing. You would be surprised how many B2B software as a service companies don't offer the checkout in a local currency. But if majority of your clients and majority of their clients were actually small to medium-sized businesses, we need to report as a business our expenses, right? So you would buy from the corporate card, and you want to, ideally, if you want to be still okay with your accountants, you got to buy in the currency where you're in, and also to avoid the bank commissions. So that alone creates a lot of like this effect of like, if I am in Europe and I know the services in the US and they don't offer me to pay in euros, it's not like the smallest currency in the world, you know, like that's odd. It feels really strange. Or you don't have, like, one of the platforms I do my ad boot camps on is called Maven. And one of the big problems there was a lot of times people who would buy the service, they would want to have an invoice with a tax on it, like VAT mentioned on it. And each country has a different VAT. So it's also a B2B service. And they are like this kind of small little things which are all about localization, and they are really important to take into consideration. It is even more serious on the B2B side than B2C side is the language. Because when you're in a consumer brand, you could speak to emotion. When you're in B2B, people make a lot of logical decisions. That's a workflow they need to improve. There is a very specific thing they want to buy for their business. And if you're not able to explain that clearly in the local language, then you are having a trouble. And the thing which happens oftentimes I see is that either they hire translators who are like regular translators, that I call them, like they don't know the context, they don't know the specifics of a software business, or they don't know specifics of accounting, so they don't know how things are called, so they just do the basic translation. But then there is a terminology in specific, like we call them to have translation dictionary, or having specific kinds of terms, like just said that these are the things you keep in English, these are the things you translate. And I think in B2B that creates even bigger impact on your business brand, because you're not considered serious enough, you don't look like you're in there. And then of course it depends on a country. I'd say the third thing is, depending on the business you're in and also the motion of your launch, are you product led, are you sales led? It's not the same to have a business in the US and have a business in Saudi Arabia. I have done the business in both. And in the US, I could message someone like you messaged me and said, "Hey, someone introduced you to like I was on the podcast with someone and they recommended to talk with you and you just come to me." In Saudi, that would work. That they would go and ask around five feedbacks, and then if someone was recommending me, they would organize a dinner or a coffee for me, you, and them to do that introduction because it's relationship-based culture. So in Saudi, if you want to make the market entrance, you cannot sit in the US and just expect that an owner of a business in Saudi would be happy to work with you like that. In Switzerland, where I live, it's very similar. It's heavily relationship-driven culture. So unless they have seen you, they kind of had experience talking with you, and then at least 2 or 3 people in their network mentioned you, they would not do business with you. So that's kind of that's the difference. I guess I think international in B2B is harder, in my opinion. It's a lot more complex and multi-layered because the average check size is also a lot higher as well.
Ah, okay. I could go on for hours asking your questions because you've got such an interesting background, and we haven't even talked about Maven and what you're doing now. So before I go to your favorite foreign word, because I know that's going to be a rich discussion, why don't you give us a quick blip on what you're doing, and then before we end, we'll give people how they can reach you.
Thank you so
So,
much.
yeah.
So what do I do now? I provide fractional CMO services for selected 2 or 3 companies a year. So I keep that small and boutique, private, work with the businesses which interest me. And also I teach AI in marketing and sales on Maven. I run AI bootcamps for people who want to move from assistive work with AI to agentic and autonomous workflows building. So far, I've run already 9 cohorts, and the next one is starting in September. And I'm also running private bootcamps for organizations who want custom programs. That's what I do nowadays.
No, fantastic. Okay, and so you know this is coming up. What's your favorite foreign word?
That's the word in Portuguese. That word is saudade. I don't know if you know that. Do you know the word?
I do, and you would be surprised at the number of people on the podcast that have said the same word. It's very, very interesting to me. But go ahead, for listeners who haven't caught that one, those episodes that said it is a
Okay, maybe
powerful
because
word.
we're like millennials, I don't know. So saudade is a word which you would not have one word to describe that in English or in German or in Russian. It's like a deep emotional state when you feel nostalgic, like you are missing something. It's like melancholy a little bit, but also the love for something. So that's a kind of
Yeah.
bittersweet pain. I don't know how to describe that, but like it is the word which I would describe my relationship with Brazil, for example. Like we're going very soon, so I'm really glad I will stop feeling that. But like you have that connection and you have that nostalgia and nostalgic feeling, and it's sadness at the same time. It's joy, and I love that word. It's just such a great
Yeah.
word.
Yeah, it really is, because it's not a negative word, and it's more than nostalgic, but there's a sadness and a love that comes from person, place, or time, period. Is
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a really special one. Maybe that's why, that's why people mention that, right? Because it's something very specific. It's not something you have in English. So a lot of us, like now I'm learning Portuguese, but it's one of the things which I learned first, and I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, yeah, that's a good one. You also mentioned before when we were talking that you have a list of words that don't have a direct translation. Do you have a couple of those that you could share with us?
Yeah, like there are a few, I guess. The one from I speak Armenian, that's my native language, and
Yeah.
one of the words is I don't know if like you have ever heard of it. It's arevaham. That's like taste of a sun.
Ooh, I like that. I've never heard of that
It's
one.
like a sun ripened apricot. Like I'm saying apricot because it's a season of apricots in Armenia, but like it's something which carries that essence of sunlight or the warmth. And you can say that about the person or a place or the food or like it's a really, I like that word a lot. Arevaham. And
how would you spell that?
I will spell that for you so you get it. You get it for the listeners. There is another one in Russian. It's a very fun one, and it's actually a lot describing, like there are some cultural aspects in Russia which are very specific, and that word is avos. Avos is like a mindset, I guess you could say it's a mindset on a way you think when you rely on a blind luck and hope. You say, avos получится. I kind of hope it happens. You don't act, you don't plan, you just think perhaps it will happen. And I don't know if there is I have never found an English word for that, but it's like that you just say that and you know that if it happens, well, it happened against the odds.
Yeah, I like that. I can't think of a word that has a direct. I like that one. I haven't heard that one.
There are some words which, like in different languages, because I work with so many countries, it's just funny. Like you don't hear those, and then you say them, and then it just sounds awesome. And there is the word, like there is an English translation for that. It's just longer. Let's go.
Yeah.
In Arabic, you say yalla. And
yalla, yes.
I don't know why. I don't know why, but for my dog, yalla is so much better than let's go. She kind of gets it. So yeah, it's a very funny one. And they also, by the way, they have really nice words about the music and poetry in Arabic. And I think one of the words, I don't know if I pronounce it right, but I remember it's called tarab. I was just looking at my list of the words, which I told you I'll bring up for today. And tarab is when you enjoy the music a lot. It's like that feeling when you listen to the music and you feel that excitement or deep emotional connection. So it's a state of feeling which is caused by music. If someone from the listeners speaks Arabic, you guys tell me if I pronounced it right or not. But my little notebook says tarab.
I love that. And I know exactly what you mean, because when I'm out in the yard doing work and I have my headset on and a song that I really like comes on or that makes me think of dancing or something, you just perk up a little bit. That's a great word. Right. We don't have anything like that.
We don't have that in English. I don't know why. Like I was like, why we don't? And I don't have that word. I don't have that word in Armenian or Russian or English or German. And when I heard that word in Arabic, I was like, what is that? And then it makes so much sense. Like, yeah. That's what I feel. That's exactly
that's a good one. All right, so Tata, where can people reach you if they'd like to talk to you or do market research or hire you or take your AI and marketing boot camp? Where can they reach out to you?
They could find me on LinkedIn. Tata Maitesian will link that for you guys if you want to find me. And you could also always send me an email. So LinkedIn and email would be the easiest ways to find me.
Okay, and so Tata's name is spelled Tata, and then her last name is Maytesyan. And what's your email?
My email is Tata, so Tata at Grow Global Tech. So Grow Global Point Tech.
growglobal.tec. Okay. Well, Tata, this has been absolutely fascinating to talk to you about. I certainly got some insights, and I've been doing marketing for a long time. So listeners, I hope you got insights too. And remember, if you like this episode, give it a 5-star rating. Follow us so you get the next episode when it launches. And then if you know somebody that's in international marketing, forward this on to them to, if you think they benefit from learning about all these experience that Tata shared. So thanks so much. Thanks, Tata.
Thank you for inviting me, and to the listeners, thank you for being with us.
Okay, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Global Marketing Show. We started this podcast to capture the stories of people who do global marketing and work for companies that export, since those companies have higher revenues, higher profits, higher valuations, higher salaries, and more stability, according to the U.S. Department of Commerce. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And if you know somebody who would be a good guest, introduce them to me, your host, Wendy Mackenzie Pease. If you'd like to learn more about global marketing or language translation and interpretation, visit Rapport International's Resource Center at www.rapport translations.com. Au revoir. Hasta luego. Ciao for now.